Are you ready? Because what I'm about to walk you through is one of the wildest coaching situations I've seen in international basketball in a long time. Caitlin Clark just broke 5 world records in a single FIBA game. 5 in one game. And the response from the coaching staff was to slowly push her out of the starting lineup. Not because she was hurt, not because she played poorly, but because, and this is an actual quote from an actual press conference, everyone deserves a chance to shine. But here's the part nobody is saying out loud right now. The coach who made that call? She's gone. No announcement, no injury report, no official statement. She just wasn't there anymore. And the guy who stepped in before a single minute of game action, before the opening tip, did the one thing the previous staff spent 2 entire games refusing to do. Then he walked up to that podium and told every reporter in that room that the previous approach was wrong. Not we're adjusting our rotation, not we're always looking at the best combinations. He said it was wrong on live television, without flinching. If you've been watching this tournament and feeling like something was off, this video is exactly what you've been waiting for. Stay until the end because I'm going to show you 3 things. First, why what Lawson was doing wasn't just a bad game plan, it was a philosophy, and that makes it way more dangerous than people realize. Second, the one number from this tournament that completely shuts down every narrative being used to justify benching Clark. And most channels are not talking about it enough. And third, the real reason why what's happening to Clark right now is bigger than basketball, bigger than FIBA, bigger than any one tournament. It connects to something that anyone who's ever been the best person in the room and still got overlooked is going to feel deeply. Quick note before we get into it. Everything you're about to hear is based on publicly available information, verified reports, and direct data analysis from the FIBA qualifying tournament. This channel is not affiliated with Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, or the WNBA. We're not here to take sides. We're here to break down what the numbers actually say and let you decide what it means. All opinions are for analysis and informational purposes. We respect every player in this conversation. All right, let's go. So the first game Caitlin Clark ever played in a Team USA senior national team jersey, not an exhibition, not a friendly, a real official FIBA qualifying game, she broke 5 world records. Let that sit for a second. 5 world records in one game. That's not a hot shooting night. That's not a soft opponent. That is the most dominant individual performance in the history of FIBA qualifying. That's a moment that in any other sport, in any other league, would have every coach in that building saying, okay, we are building everything around this person starting right now. Think about it from a pure coaching standpoint. Your player just did something no one in the history of this competition has ever done. The natural next move is clear. You put her in the starting lineup. You build your system around what she just showed you, and you create every condition possible for her to do it again. That's what any coach would do with Luka, with Steph, with any player who just showed you they're the best person on the floor by a significant margin. But that's not what happened. Instead, the rotation started shifting. Clark started getting moved off ball. New lineup combinations started appearing not to optimize winning, but to make sure, in Lawson's own words, everyone gets their reps. And when a reporter actually asked Kara Lawson directly about Clark, after one of those games asked her point blank about Clark's role and what the plan was going forward, Lawson didn't answer. She pivoted. She talked about how this roster is full of great players, how this program is about more than any one person, how every player on Team USA deserves to shine. And look, in isolation, that sounds like a reasonable thing to say. It sounds like good team culture. It sounds like the kind of answer you give when you want to seem balanced and fair. Until you remember that she just watched that same person break 5 world records. And she still couldn't say out loud that Clark was her starting point guard. That's not team philosophy. That's avoidance. And the numbers showed it immediately. When Clark wasn't running the offense, the pace dropped. The assists dried up. The team shifted into half-court sets that didn't suit anyone on that roster. Not because the talent wasn't there, it absolutely was, but because the system was actively working against what the talent naturally wanted to do. This is basic basketball cause and effect. You take away the person who creates flow and you get stagnation. That's not opinion. That's what happened on the scoreboard. But here's the part that most people covering this tournament are glossing over. And when I tell you this, I want you to think about it carefully because this changes the entire picture. Lawson wasn't making these decisions alone. Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, the team Clark plays for every single day in the WNBA, was serving as a Team USA assistant coach during this tournament. She was in that coaching room. She was part of those conversations. And White has a philosophy about Clark that anyone who's followed the Fever closely already knows. Slow her down. Limit how much she runs the offense. Keep her off ball in key possessions. That's been the observable pattern in Indiana. That is how White has been deploying Clark in her system. So now you have Lawson dodging every direct question about Clark's role, and you have White sitting in the same building with a coaching approach that is specifically built around a version of Clark that frankly doesn't really exist anymore. Two coaches, same staff, same direction. And I want to be really clear here. I'm not saying anyone had a meeting and decided to sabotage Caitlin Clark. I'm saying that when two coaches share a philosophy about limiting your best player, and that philosophy produces measurable negative results on the court, you have to look at it honestly. Because this is what a system looks like when it's working against itself. And then heading into the New Zealand game, Kara Lawson was just gone. Now, and I want to acknowledge this because it matters, there's a reasonable explanation. Lawson is the head coach at Duke. It was March Madness. She likely had obligations she couldn't skip. That's not a mystery. That's a scheduling conflict. But the lack of any clear communication around her absence created a vacuum, and into that vacuum stepped Nate Tibbetts, head coach of the Phoenix Mercury, now running Team USA on an interim basis. And the very first thing he does before any game action, before any film session with the new group, before anything, is put Caitlin Clark in the starting lineup. Just like that. No long deliberation, no committee, no, we need to evaluate all our options. He looked at the roster and put his best player in the starting five. And that alone told you everything about how he sees this team and what he thought went wrong before he got there. But he didn't stop there. He restructured the entire rotation. He gave Clark and Paige Bueckers real extended floor time together for the first time in this tournament. Not a few scattered minutes. Actual runs where they could build something. He pulled back Angel Reese's minutes. He pushed the pace. 3 decisions, all pointing in the same direction this team is going to run through Clark, not around her. And then the press conference happened. Tibbetts didn't just defend the new starting lineup. He stood in front of those reporters and said directly that not starting Clark earlier was a mistake. Not a rotation adjustment, not a personnel evaluation, a mistake. I want you to understand how rare that is in professional sports. Coaches don't do this. They protect each other. They protect the institution. They talk about always looking to improve. They don't stand on a podium and say the people who came before them got it wrong. Tibbetts did it without hesitating. And if you go back and compare that moment to Lawson's press conference, answer the pivot to team unity, the speech about everyone deserving to shine, the careful non-answer about Clark's role, the contrast is almost uncomfortable to watch. One coach protected a philosophy that wasn't working. The other one fixed it on day one and then said so out loud. The result was a 55-point win, 101-46. Now I know what some people are going to say. New Zealand isn't a strong opponent. A blowout win doesn't prove everything. And that's fair, I'll give you that. But we're not talking about a team suddenly playing better because the competition got easier. We're talking about the same roster, the same talent in the same tournament, looking completely different under a different philosophy. That gap, that visible, measurable gap, that's coaching. All right, so Clark gets the starting spot. She gets the minutes. She gets the system she should have had from game one. And then the narratives showed up, because they always show up. She can't play defense. She just jacks up threes. She's a volume shooter padding her stats. She's still not fully back after 8 months of injury recovery. She's not really at 100% yet. Let me go through every single one of these. Defense first, because honestly, this is the easiest one to bury. In the New Zealand game, Clark had 2 steals. And not just any 2 steals, both of them converted directly into fast break points on the other end. She read the passing lane, got her hand on the ball, and her team scored because of it. Both times. That's not luck. That's not being in the right place. That's a basketball IQ read that you either have or you don't. And across the whole tournament, she's sitting in the top 5 on the entire Team USA roster in steals. Top 5. On a roster full of WNBA all-stars and veterans. A defensive liability doesn't finish in the top 5 in steals on a team like that. A guard who makes her defense count absolutely does. Now the three-pointer narrative. The idea that Clark just stands behind the arc and fires away. Here's what the film actually shows. Most of her scoring in this tournament is coming from inside the arc. Mid-range pull-ups, drives into the paint, finishing through contact. She is not hiding on the perimeter waiting for a catch-and-shoot opportunity. She is attacking the defense in multiple ways and scoring in multiple ways. The three-point shots she does take aren't desperation heaves either. They're coming off, reads off movement, off situations where the defense has already been forced to make a decision. The volume shooter narrative is where things really fall apart, though, because there is one statistic that dismantles this completely. Clark leads Team USA in efficiency rating. Efficiency rating measures production per possession, more output per opportunity than anyone else on the roster. Anyone. So if she were a volume shooter, someone padding stats by simply taking more shots than her teammates, her efficiency would be average or below average. That's how volume shooting works. You take more, you make roughly the same percentage, your efficiency stays flat. But Clark leads the team in efficiency. That means she's getting more out of every possession than any of her teammates. You cannot do that by being a volume shooter. You can only do that by making better decisions than everyone else. And then there's this, she also leads the team in assists. So not only is she the most efficient scorer on the roster, she's also giving the ball up more than anyone else and making the people around her better. The volume shooter narrative doesn't survive contact with those 2 numbers in the same sentence. But the number I really want you to sit with, the one that I think settles this entire conversation, is the plus-minus figure. Clark doesn't just lead Team USA in plus-minus. She leads every single player on every single roster in the entire FIBA 2026 qualifying tournament. Every country, every player on every team. When she is on the floor, Team USA is outscoring opponents by a wider margin than any other player is doing for their team anywhere in this competition. That is the definition of most impactful player in the tournament. And it isn't close. She is doing all of this 8 months removed from a serious injury, showing up to this tournament still dealing with a flu. And she said in a post-game interview that she's been feeling better physically, and yeah, the numbers back that up. But the fact that she is the most impactful player in the entire field, while not even fully healthy, is its own kind of thing. And through all of it, the lineup controversy, the coaching staff situation, the fan reaction, exploding all over social media, Clark said nothing publicly. Not one complaint, not one cryptic post, not one loaded comment in a post-game interview. She just played her minutes, put up her numbers, and let the box score do what it does. There's something I want to spend a minute on here because it's the part of this story that doesn't get enough attention. While all the drama was happening around the coaching staff, Clark and Paige Beckers were building something on the floor. And the New Zealand game was the clearest look at it yet. When Tibbetts gave them real floor time together, the offense started moving in a way it simply hadn't been moving before in this tournament. Not marginally better. Visibly, obviously, noticeably better. Noticeably, here's why it works. Clark pushes pace in transition, reads the defense before it even sets, and makes the right pass. Beckers is on the other side, cutting hard, finding space, finishing clean. They're not stepping on each other. They're not both trying to be the alpha at the same time. Clark runs the show and Beckers plays off it. And that combination is a nightmare to guard because the defense has to make a choice. And there is no good option. Collapse on Clark to stop the drive, and Beckers gets a clean look from 3. Stay home on Beckers to take away the 3, and Clark drives or pulls up from mid-range. Try to hedge both, and Clark finds the 3rd option. It never resolves cleanly for the defense. That's what makes it work. In the Italy game earlier in the tournament, Clark put up 12 points and 5 assists in about 22 minutes. Most of that production came from her ability to get into the lane and find open teammates. Drive, collapse the defense, kick it out for a clean look. That's how the offense is supposed to flow. And it flows because teams can't sit back and just let Clark drive. They have to respect her pull-up, her floater, her ability to draw contact and get to the free throw line. So when she does kick it out, those are real open shots. That's the whole system working. Compare that to what it looked like under Lawson. Clark off ball, pace slow, half-court sets that didn't match what anyone on this roster does naturally. The team wasn't bad in those stretches, but it looked stuck. Not because of talent, because of fit. Now, here's where we need to have an honest conversation. Tibbetts may be the interim coach. Lawson may come back when March Madness ends, and if she does, the staff comes back, the philosophy comes back, and everything Tibbetts built in this tournament potentially gets undone before the World Cup. That's the unresolved question. That's what's sitting out there right now. Because what this tournament showed clearly, with data, not just vibes, is that this team with Clark at the point, with Beckers playing off her with the pace pushed and the offense run through their best player, is a genuinely dangerous team. The kind of team that can compete at the highest level of international basketball. But that team only exists when the coaching philosophy allows it to exist. I want to step outside the basketball for just a minute. Because this story is about more than lineup decisions and press conferences. Caitlin Clark walked into a system that was not set up to accommodate what she actually is. Not because she wasn't good enough. She was clearly more than good enough. But because she was good in a way that the people in charge didn't have a framework for handling. And she didn't argue. She didn't campaign for herself. She didn't plant stories with reporters or make cryptic comments or do any of the things that would have been completely understandable given the situation. She just played. While the controversy was exploding, she was accumulating the best plus-minus number in the entire field. While coaches were avoiding questions about her role, she was leading the team in assists. While the debate raged online, she was converting steals into fast break points on the other end. Here's the truth that Clark understood intuitively that a lot of people spend years trying to figure out. When you cannot control the system around you, the only thing you can control is the quality of the work you do in the space you're given. Clark could not control Lawson's lineup decisions. She could not control White's philosophy. She could not control when or whether anyone was going to stand up and tell the truth. But she could control every single possession she was given. Every decision she made with the ball, every minute she spent on that floor. And when Tibbetts finally gave her the opportunity when the starting spot came, she was ready. Not just physically, mentally, completely ready. Because she had never stopped being ready. The validation came from outside, but the readiness was built from the inside. And that is the thing that no coaching staff, no rotation decision, no philosophy can ever take away from you. Drop a basketball emoji in the comments right now if Clark has ever given you a moment that made you jump out of your seat. Let's show her how many people are actually watching and riding with her through all of this. And I genuinely want to know what you think. Should Tibbetts be the permanent head coach going forward? Or does Lawson come back and undo everything that was just built? Drop your honest take below. We read every single one and we don't delete opinions. Every comment helps this reach more fans who deserve to hear the full picture, not just the headlines. If you think the truth matters in sports, make some noise right now. Now you know the real story of what happened with Team USA and why that Tibbetts podium moment lands differently than a normal coaching change. But the Stephanie White and Indiana Fever question the one about what happens to Clark in the WNBA under a coach with this philosophy heading into the 2026 season. That video is already done, and it's right there on your screen. Trust me, you want to see that one.